Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Architecture Social LinkedIn YouTube special. Oh my gosh, let's get all of us on here. Guys, can you hear me? Everything working? Amazing! We're live. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Stephen Drew with a lozenge in my mouth. Probably bad timing, but I got a sore throat. I was doing Clubhouse last night. The show goes on now, and I'm joined by the fantastic Tara Cull from Archie
Hello.
English. Thank you, Tara, for being here. And the super special guest don't you, Sana from To Scale. It's amazing. We're all here. We're live, and today we're talking about being productive. Now, what everyone didn't see here before this meeting is that I sent the link to this 5-10 minutes before we were rushing here, and if there was ever anyone that needed organizing in life, it is me. So rather than booking in a sneaky session with Tara and Sana individually, what better way for me to learn live on this stream? And so the topic today that I thought is really useful for everyone is we can talk about when you're feeling unproductive or you're thinking, how do I get organized? Perhaps between us all, we can share some tips, some advice, and between that, we can get some good tips, and hopefully, some people in the audience can ask questions. But just before we go into it, this is interactive, so you can you can send us a comment, you can send us a question, and I will bring that up on the screen. As long as it's PG-13, anything naughty, and you don't get on the stream. Me and Tara have learned a lot about Twitch last week. But without further ado, first of all, Tara, how are you today? Are you okay?
Yep, I'm going great. I've just come back from a run actually, so very
Are you?
organized. Quickly, 30 minutes ago, I was just getting back from a run, so I'm feeling good. Thank you. How are
Amazing.
you? How are you feeling?
I'm all right. I had a shower for the live stream, so I'm feeling fresh. I'm smelling good. Not that it matters, but getting ready. And actually, exercise is a really good way to stay, or you keep your mind fresh, and we can touch upon that later. So thank you for
Absolutely.
finishing your run and being here. And so, Sana, how are you? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I've just been working, doing the 9 to 5, so this is actually my lunch break as
You're on
such.
your
But
lunch
yeah,
break. Okay. Well, so remind me where you work. Remind me, what's the name of the company?
it's called Carlson Adams. So it's a
Carlson
small
Adams.
practice.
I promise we'll finish by the end of the lunch break. We won't get Sana in trouble. That's amazing. And look, it's really great that you're here in your lunch break. And there's so much you
Yes, good to be
do
here.
on scale, which is amazing. So perhaps what we can do first of all, in case no one's
Mhm.
met us before, Tara, do you want to explain what Archie English is first, and then Sana, you can explain what scale is.
Yeah.
Sure. So Archi English is, I work with individuals who speak English as a second language. So I work directly with architects, landscape architects, and people within the industry as well to help them with their communication skills. And yeah, it's something that I really enjoy and I love it. So it does require me to be very organized, that's for sure.
Okay, amazing. That's really interesting. And Sana, do you want to tell everyone about To Scale?
Yeah, so To Scale is an architecture blog, platform, community, all of it at the moment. It's kind of just about helping students to be obviously more productive, be a bit more organized, and help them get through university and make it easier for them. So we post weekly articles and blog posts and tutorials, and really engaging the community with us as well.
Wow, and you need to teach me before you go into it, like, because you do that. You do post regularly content
Mhm.
every week, and so I actually agree that setting a frequent calendar is probably the smart thing to do with anyone that's got a business like that. But I
Yeah,
find it really difficult. I hate structuring things in calendars, and I know I should. So
right.
I'm gonna have to write down notes or listen to this after later. But anyone that's not done it at all, that hasn't seen it yet, check out Two Scale blog online and check out Archie English. And so, I probably should say for anyone that hasn't met me before or seen the Architecture Social is a community, and now we're almost at 4,000 people. Almost.
Yay.
20 more people need to join. Maybe I need to give like a badge or something for like the 4,000 person that joins. You know, they kind of join up. It's like woohoo, and then they're like, what did I walk into? But it's like, you're the 4,000 person. Anyway, so it's all about getting people jobs. That's at its core. And there's fun and there's engagement. And we got all this cool stuff. But the actual process of looking for a job, it can be really stressful, and it does help to keep your productivity high so you can chip away at this difficult task. And as well as that, as well as being organized and productive, getting the job is really, really important. But the way you do it, if it's least stressful, it's going to be easier for everyone. And that's what it's all about. So you're not alone. And here today, we can all swap tips. So what I was going to say to kick it off is that I think half of it, to me, when you're talking about getting organized and productivity, half of it, all of it is the mind frame, really. But there are tools online which can really help that and can really push that effort. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about Notion today, because I think that's your favorite, Sana.
Sana's so excited.
Yeah. But maybe what we can start off with is that I'll do to start off with is I'll say where I think I should be more productive and what I do. So me as a personality, okay, I like doing stuff and creating stuff and pushing myself forward. I once did a psychometric test and it said that I am really stubborn, but I'm creative and I'm out for going out there, and I am someone that doesn't like lists. And that psychometric test, I read it and burst out laughing because I felt like, wow, this is true. So the way I try to get it organized, I do have a calendar which I force myself to. I do make commitments, but I am someone that doesn't really use a calendar. I don't really do all that stuff, but I try. And in my day job, I will do I'll do every day a 9 o'clock meeting. So there are people there, that's in the diary, and that's structured, and that's how I go about my day job. And on the Architecture Social, we have an events calendar, which I do stick to. That's embedded in my calendar on the Outlook, and that's what I try to keep to. And I also make time for work, and then after work, I normally do the stuff outside. Wow, I look like the next savior. Yeah. But that's really what I do. Tara, maybe do you want to, first of all, explain, you touched upon it briefly, but you're teaching lots of students. And first of all, how do you try and get organized and keep being productive?
Yeah, good question. And I think firstly, before I talk about how I get organized, I think I really like what you were saying too about you did a psychometric test and you figured out what you like. And for me, for the last year, before I started working with students, I did a lot of work to figure out what I'm like as well. And so working with a coach, I followed a lot of the work of Gretchen Rubin, who looks at motivation and how you're motivated. So for example, with her model, there's 4 different tendencies. So there's an upholder who is internally motivated, but also will be externally motivated. Questioner. So every time you tell them something, they will say, no, tell me why do I need to do this? Then you have obligers, which is more like what I am, where if somebody tells you to do something, they'll just do it. And then you have rebels who will be, when you tell them to do something, they will just do the opposite.
Don't look at me, Tara. Don't look at me.
I feel it sounds like you might be a bit of a rebel not liking lists. So I'm somebody who actually oscillates between obliger and rebel. So knowing that really helped me to understand how I need to be productive. And so what I've done, a bit like you, is I've set up a Calendly link. I've made sure that in my calendar, I block out times so that when people can book in my calendar, that's me being organized. But sometimes I can be a little bit, I don't like to be too organized and make lists. So I think for me, it was about knowing kind of what I'm like and realizing that everyone's different. And so what I try to do now is at the start of the week, I try to figure out what are my top priorities for the week. For me, like knowing 2 weeks in advance is really, really challenging because I have a lot of things in my head when I'm with students. I try to be in the moment. So yeah, that's really helped for me. So it's hard to be motivated and organized and when you're trying to do a lot of things. And not only am I doing that, I'm trying to create content for LinkedIn and for Instagram, and like it's can be a lot. So I think it's hard. You have to kind of I find like having accountability partners works really well as well.
I quite like that, and you know, it's interesting because you touched upon it, accountability. I think when you run in a team, like as you said, I can just go off in my own world with certain things and not have a list and not do that stuff. But especially when you work in the collaborative environment, you do that, owe that to each other. And actually, you're right, that level of accountability between people, it's usually more of a productive working environment, you know, where you're communicating with each other, you're not feeling lost at sea, and you get more done. But
Yeah, absolutely.
but I like what you touched upon then, because it's the two sides of it. There's the planning side of things, and then there's the in the moment. And luckily, I'm someone that I enjoy being in the moment, and I'm okay with it. And it's been really interesting, especially doing podcasts where you two, I mean, you because we know each other a little bit, you know a bit what I'm like, where I send a link 10 minutes before, and sometimes for a lot of people that would be overwhelming. And you're right, I do need to work in it so that, for instance, maybe there's a calendar invite, and you say to people, don't worry, I've got your back. And luckily we have that between us because it's a level of trust, and you know that I will, you know, I will never, you know, rush anyone or put anyone on the spot. But I do think, like you, it does help in certain scenarios to be organized, to keep people in the loop. So that is something I've got to do more and more in the future. So thank you, Tara. That's really useful. And we'll come back to that point in a bit. Now, Sana down here, was really interesting with yourself, Sana, is that I admire as well, especially on your Instagram. I feel like we do know each other, but
Yeah.
because what's great is you let people into your process, and so, and especially productivity does pop up into it. Because what I like is that you admit when you're, you know, having a role, you've done some stuff, you're happy, and then
Yeah.
we also see the other side sometimes where you're just like, I haven't done anything today, and maybe that's okay, and we see your process there. So, I mean, do you want? I'm sure maybe in the last year since we spoke, I've seen you do certain stuff. I've seen you do the website. And first of all, do you want to let people into maybe your current process of how you get organized and how you build to scale?
Yeah, okay. So if I start back at university before I even set up to scale, I didn't use any like digital tools or anything. It was very much analog and very much kind of writing things down in one place. That would be like personal stuff I had to do, uni work, design projects, whatever, in my little sketchbook, which is fine, which is great. And that's one way of being organized and, you know, doing things like on the spot. And then after I graduated, I obviously wanted to keep building my skills while applying for jobs and things. And then a part of that was also setting up to scale, which is a blog. And I set myself the initial goal that I would try and post weekly articles every Monday at 12 p.m. That's it. And then in terms of like social media, my main platform at the time was just Instagram. So I told myself 3 posts every week. All three would be somehow related to that article going out that week. So it's not me creating new content per se, but it's kind of repurposing that content as well, which I think is really important. It's something that my friend Joe Gannon told me about. So he's kind of like a LinkedIn expert as well. Um, and he's basically all about, you know, how you can push out really small and punchy content that's going to be impactful, but you don't have to do it from scratch. It's all kind of already there in a sense. And then, so yeah, in terms of kind of being productive, also, what is being productive? I think it's such a relative term and it's so different for each person. And also, like you said, you know, people are seeing me, you know, share my process, which I think is really important because by seeing the fact that, you know, even if you think I'm posting like 10, 15 stories a day, and I'm supposedly doing this work, I'm not posting the times where I'm kind of like laying down on the sofa doing absolutely nothing or binge watching a TV show or whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, yeah, and I think people get kind of caught up in this sort of toxic productivity cycle where they think, oh my God, this person's being so productive. Why am I not like that? But it's actually just like this shift in systems and habits and planning, and all of this stuff that you guys have just talked about is actually really connected in a sense. So, you know, by planning, you can put yourself kind of forward to, you know, schedule things in advance, or think about your future self, think about what you're going to be doing, and then that way make it just slightly easier. That, I think that's the main thing about being productive, is just making it as easy for yourself as possible, because then you're not kind of ending up procrastinating, you're not, you know, sitting down with a blank piece of paper and unsure of what to do next. So that's also an aspect of it, is just to kind of keep thinking ahead in terms of, you know, what you want to be doing.
Amazing. Look, and that's really, really helpful. I think that that's one of the myth busters that I have as well. Exactly the same thing, that I can't be in all these social media platforms and do a day job and run the Architecture Social after hours. And you're right, it's funny because if you see a post at 11 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm actually in my job at 9 o'clock, but you can schedule things to go out. And okay, while we're not talking about architecture per se right now, I think if you're doing any kind of marketing or outbound work or you're organizing events, you're right, there are all these tools available that you can schedule one post and it goes out on all the social media platforms. And so for anyone that's listening, with the Architecture Social, I use Buffer. So it's all hooked up to all of my accounts, and I will schedule something and it will go out. Now, you guys will laugh because there's nothing in my buffer queue, so I literally post now and it goes out. But the concept is that, as Asana said, is that you build up content over time and you schedule it to go out. The other bit that I do quickly before we jump on and open the conversation is that I repurpose stuff. So, for instance, this is a conversation, we're talking, it's live and people can participate, but I will also put this on the Architecture Social podcast because I found that what's interesting is some people on the podcast will like an episode where I talk to someone about their career, and that's offline, but some people do not want to watch this content on LinkedIn and they want to listen to it on the way to work. And so you can use that amazing content that you've done in different vehicles. So if there's anyone listening here that's doing architectural work or photography as well, it's kind of, in my opinion, a really good advice that you get that picture and you put it there, you put it there, you put it there, you put it there, and you make these platforms work for you and not the other way around. And like a Buffer, or maybe Sana, there's a different one on Tara, you can tell me, but you literally log it up to all your social media accounts and it's ready to go as and when you're posting. So that's kind of like an example of making these tools making things easier for me. And what I've noticed with these tools is that sometimes I will get seduced by a tool. I'm like, oh my gosh, this was amazing, and you get sucked into it, and then you actually realize it's not really doing much for me. Whereas though Buffer actually saves me time. And I've seen Notion, where I need to put the effort in because I haven't started yet, but when you do it and you build it up, it saves you time. It's energy at the start, but it pays off in the long term. When I find that a lot of these tools that we're talking about, you need to calibrate and set them up, but then once they're set up, they're a lot easier. Just to expand upon on that subject of thought, Tara, what's your thoughts about that? Is there anything that you use in particular that makes things easy for you?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you're saying, because at the start I was very resistant to planning things and putting them in a scheduler, that sort of thing. So I use Planoly for my Instagram. And with my LinkedIn, I don't use a scheduler, but I put it into Notion. So I put all of my posts into Notion. When I'm writing them, what I tend to do is I write them in one go. So I'll set aside a block of time, maybe 2 hours, and think about the things that I want to talk about. And I also have a very particular structure of what I want to talk about too. So there's 5 kind of key themes. And then I'll write them all out in one go. And then with Notion, I can say if it's in progress or if it's complete. So I kind of use that in a way, because sometimes I feel like particularly with LinkedIn, I want to make sure that I'm engaging as well. So I don't want that to just be being sent off and then not really being there. So yeah, but I was very resistant in the beginning to planning anything. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be there. But then you realize, you don't have the time. If you do it in blocks, you can be thinking about something in that time, do it, and then just not think about it, or think about it less. There's never a time when I'm not thinking about it. It's just you think about it less. So I think it's definitely helped me, and it's probably helped me to see what's coming, what's happening in the future, and maybe how I could make it better. Also, I think I need to be better at repurposing, because one thing I've realized And people keep telling me, like, every day it's a new post about something different. I think, oh gosh, I need to repurpose more often. But I guess I'm very passionate about it, and I want to get out as much as I can. So, but you have to look after yourself as well. So I've got to make sure I'm giving myself the time. But yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think you're doing a great job of it. Repurposing. It's half of this is experimentation, and I love that's what we're talking about here. And what's interesting, just before we touch on what you said, we're all doing the same. We're doing the same and different. As in, so what's interesting is, I've seen you build up to scale from nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tara, you've got a business actively engaged with people, and in terms of architectural recruitment, a lot of it is responding and helping people out and booking in people's stuff and meeting people. I mean, that's very, very active, reactive, but also with the architecture social, it requires a lot of work all the time to get events on, to grow it, to get new people in, to communicate what you're doing in and out in the world. It requires a lot of energy, and you're right, the more and more these tools that we can use, it just makes it easier. So I mean, Sana, I mean, what's do you want to kind of expand on a little bit about your process then at the moment? The Notion Queen. Notion should sponsor you, man. You're so good with the software. It's amazing. I need to write some tips.
Yeah, so in terms of like social media planning, I actually use a tool called SmarterQ. So it's just like Buffer and Planoly and stuff. It has this really cool feature actually where you can schedule in evergreen posts. So what it'll do is, say I post something on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, and then actually I can set it to post the same thing again, slightly worded differently or with another link or whatever at a later stage in time. And then it'll kind of recycle that post in that sense. So I've seen content creators who have literally like retweeted stuff they tweeted like years ago, but it's relevant now too, and it's actually helped people now as well, whether they're new to your audience or whatnot. So that's something that I try to do, but definitely setting aside that time, like Tara said, just to like schedule in all those posts and create that content. That's something I do a lot. And I actually see it, how you said about...
Oh, we've lost her.
We'll get Sana back, so we'll hold that thought. Tara, remember what she said, but I'm sure
I don't remember.
Which is coming back actually.
It's interesting though, like I was thinking too, because a lot of this is it's so different to when you're working in practice, productivity, because you're so reliant on other people. And I remember in my first years of working as a landscape architect being so organized and just feeling like I was getting annoyed at all these interruptions and things like that. So you had to be more adaptable. Whereas now I feel like there's much more room to kind of, do what I need to do.
Well, this is it. And also, it's probably worth, why are you feeling productive and organized? Like a good example there was, bless her, Sana, disconnected, right? It's no problem. It's no big deal. This is life, it happens.
What happens?
And while you can plan things and get organized, what I was saying, and I talked about it a bit last night. That's why I had one of them losses. Sorry for like getting the wrapper out and stuff online. But basically, the Architecture Social, we have a clubhouse and we talk. And in the evening, what I think is that we were talking about planning and reacting. And I do think, though, that all the plans in the world and all the scripts in the world, don't worry, Sana, you're back and you're cool. You're back, don't worry, you're fine. What I was saying, though, is that you can plan things and you can script things, but like that, sometimes the internet just drops out. Or like what we were saying, Tara, last night, is that when you're given a crit, sometimes you get that question that you don't expect coming. And then when you plan things and organize, you've got to be able to roll with the punches, and that is life. So I think it's always good to have a healthy balance to organize stuff, but expect the unexpected, like that. Maybe someone's brother was downloading something. We don't know. Probably was, but it's no drama, is it? This is real life. And
it's what happens.
So Sana, you cut off when you were saying something.
We forgot.
I was talking about the fact that, so you said you're not really a big fan of lists, right?
Yes.
So what I do, instead of scheduling, tasks, I actually schedule in areas of focus. So what I'll do is, if I need to work on, writing a blog post, for example, I don't tell myself, write introduction, write like conclusion, do the SEO and blah, blah. I like block out like 2 hours or 3 hours to do as many blog posts as I can or get as far as I can. Same thing with any like design work or projects and things like that. It's more about scheduling in what you want to be focusing on for that chunk of time and actually setting yourself a time goal rather than an output goal. Because in that sense, if you don't meet that output, then you kind of feel a bit kind of annoyed at yourself afterwards, saying like, why didn't I complete that? And then you start feeling guilty, and then in turn that makes you even more procrastinated afterwards. So yeah, that was one of my points, and I don't remember the rest.
No, that's cool. That's really helpful. And I'd like to touch upon that point of it's really easy at first, especially with online social media, is that you can look at some, and Sana, sometimes I do look, I do think of your scale as well when I think of this. It's like there's so many posts there that sometimes I'm like, I can never do as good as Sana does. But what's really nice here is to talk about that basically you organize it, you build it up. So what I'm trying to say here is we're all human. These are tools and there's stuff there. But for anyone listening here, like, do not be intimidated by these tools and don't get put off at first if you kind of feel yourself resisting at first. Because I do that, I'm like, I used to use my calendar on my phone and that's it. And like the idea of Notion, I'm in that process now where I'm like you, Tara. I'm like, I know it's gonna help me, but I'm at that point where I'm just like, but if I keep persevering with it and get through it, then you learn from it, you become better, and it's part of the adaptive process. So for anyone listening, do not feel like, oh gosh, I'm so far behind, I can't be bothered. Don't do that, because everyone can start. And it's also like YouTube or anything. Like now, I think in Young Teacher Social, we have 1,000 people subscribed to the channel. At first, I was just like, never going to get there. Why should I bother? And then I remember that luckily I have a friend called Will McDaniel. He's been on one of my podcasts before, and now he had one of them videos that went viral, and he has 700,000 people. And I was I'm really good friends with him, and I was just like, yeah, I'm never going to get to that point. And he's just like, what are you on about? You got 1,000 people in a year. I took me 4 years to get to 1,000. And what's really interesting, we always forget that. And then when we look at people and they've gone so far, I think it's really easy to go, I can't do it to scale, or I can't do the social, or how can I do it? Start a business like Tara's doing with English and have all this stuff. And I think that it's day by day and breaking it down. And what I was going to say is that we talked a lot about the tools and stuff, but I think for me, one of the tips I want to share with everyone on like how to get organized and productive is you can't just it's like a New Year's resolution where you're like, I'm never going to drink again. It doesn't work like that. You've got to break down the tasks. So instead of maybe going like, right, I'm going to rehaul everything, maybe you go like, okay, this weekend, I'm going to open up Notion. Next weekend, I'll explore a buffer. And then, 2-3 days later, you will do your first post in the buffer or the tool that you on about, Sarah. And basically you picking it up from there. But I think for anyone here, the most important thing is don't get overwhelmed. They're all tools to help you. And what we're talking about here is stuff that is useful for what we do. And the other bit that I wanted to touch upon just before we open the conversation up again is that while I do architectural recruitment and architecture social in the evening, you could use that as, I'm sure a lot of people here, you're thinking about, you have your side hustle outside of architecture, or you have your hobby. And a lot of this, the kind of productivity and organization tools that we're talking about, will really help you do that. And I've seen people in architecture who are like amazing painters and stuff, and they're like, oh, how am I ever going to try and sell this stuff, or how am I ever going to get my artwork out there? And it's actually easier than you think if you use these tools. And yeah, that was kind of like my point here. If anyone's in the audience, because I can see people are here, if you want to type a question to Tara or Sana or even me, I don't know how much help I'll be, but you can say a question to me. Don't fire them through and we will answer the questions. But Okay, so let's just open it up a bit. Let's go back to the question where we talked about how to get productive and to be more organized. Tara, or Sana, maybe Tara, I'll just jump in.
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah, you start.
Yeah,
Come on.
I love what you were saying about, and I think this is really, really important. And I feel like we need to emphasize this is that everyone is different and
Yeah.
not everyone is going to do things the same. And it's okay to be like that. You can do things differently. One of my favorite things is a post-it note. And I love this. So in the morning, when I'm going through my diary, okay, this is what I need to do for the day, I just write on my post-it note, what are my 3 priorities? I stick them on my computer. And then when it's finished, I take it off the computer and I put it in the bin. And it just feels good for me. Other people say they write a list and they like crossing things off. So it's whatever works for you. And I think it's about finding something that works for you. And I think the other thing that you were talking about too, which I really like, is that it's about knowing what your priorities are.
Yeah.
So with people that I work with, what can tend to happen is that when they have the conversation with me, they want to improve their English, or they have really big goals.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily know how that looks on a day-to-day basis. So they say, I want to be this and I want to be able to do that. But what sort of small steps do you need to take in order to get there? So I often encourage not to, although I think that goals are good, I think what I try to do first is to just kind of dip your toe in the water and kind of see what is working, because everything is different. And there's so much information out there. You should be doing this, you should be doing that, try this, try that. And it's really hard to kind of shut that off sometimes. So it's really important to sort of understand what's important for you, what's going to work for you, and don't worry about what everyone else is doing. It's what you like that's important. And I think what you were talking about too with the YouTube, we often will look at somebody who's maybe 10 years ahead of us and think, why can't I do it like that? But we don't see what they did when they first started or what they were doing at the beginning. When I first started Arch English, I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, see what happens. But the more people you talk to, the more you understand what's happening, what works. You just build it slowly. And, I'm not interested in the short-term gains. I'm more interested I'm in it for the long term. So I'm not going to go anywhere. And I think it's important you just sort of reassess, know what your priorities are. And I would say that all of that these are sort of things that I learned working in a practice as well. Going in the morning and knowing what my 3 priorities were, writing them on a post-it note, putting them on my computer. And then the client would ring and be like, oh, I want you to change this and I need it now. So, these things you have to make allowances for, I think. So
amazing.
Yeah.
And when I was typing away there, it's because when you were talking, something resonated with me, and I had to get my note ready.
That's good.
Yeah, well, I will touch upon what I wanted to say in a bit, but I think it's only fair I let the lovely Sana jump in. Sana, is there something that you were thinking about when we were chatting there that you'd like to add to the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think how you spoke about being prepared for the unexpected, that's a really key aspect, because you need to give yourself that sort of breathing room, and that breathing room, or taking time out for yourself and prioritizing your well-being as well, is also equally productive as doing other tasks and working on other projects. I think that's something that people don't really kind of take into account, and they only kind of see it as like a last option or a second, like a final thought or whatever, and they don't really understand it until they get to a point of burnout, and then they're like, oh, hold on, why is this happening? I thought I was being productive. So I think that's also a key aspect. But I think you touched on some really good points, Tara, about prioritizing just a few things. And I think people have a lot of friction when it comes to being productive, is because they don't know where to start or how to start. And I think even have you heard of the 2-minute rule, where you just work on something for 2 minutes and that's it? You tell yourself, okay, I'm just gonna try and use Notion for 2 minutes and that's it, no more. And if after the 2 minutes you kind of give up and you're like, okay, maybe it's not for me, fair enough. But most of the time what happens is after the 2 minutes, you kind of think, oh, well, I'll just carry on for a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And then actually over time, you build up that resilience and you're kind of thinking, well, I know that I'll have this kind of focus on this specific task for a certain amount of time. So, like, for example, I can only really realistically write about 3 blog posts before my brain switches off and I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And I know myself and I know that about me. Therefore, I plan in that kind of aspect and I'm thinking, okay, I'll set aside about 2 hours for doing so, not like 5 hours of the entire day, for example. So yeah, it's just that sort of how to start is really difficult for most people. Even in kind of design, when you're thinking about the brief that you have to follow or build upon, it's really difficult. So I think figuring out what you enjoy the most and how you work best is also a key point to productivity.
I love it. I think they're both great values. So what popped in mind when we were talking there, Tara, which is interesting, and Sana, you kind of embodied a bit of the point I'm going to make here, is that we're talking about staying organized, productive, and you're right. It's normally when people think of these stuff, you're driving towards a target, and to say, as we were talking earlier, I'm going to be the biggest YouTuber ever. That, while it's possible, that's like there. And what I find really interesting is that while you were saying, Tara, you've got to be careful of the word goals, and that's where you use priorities, is that they're almost a little bit more bite-sized and achievable, because I think it's really important that you have things to aim for. I just think it's good to do it little by little. Or like what we were saying there of, today I'm going to do this, today I'm going to do that. My goal is to get to 10 Instagram followers, 20 Instagram, 30, or in architecture it's to get a new client on, or maybe I'm going to reach out today, I'm going to build up my following. Whatever it is, if it's a bit smaller and bite-sized, it's then more achievable, and you're less likely to go like, do you know what, I can't be bothered. It's like that thing of, like I get it a lot, because one of the things I've always struggled for in my life is like weight loss and gain, right? And if I suddenly go like, oh, I need to go super skinny again, that's just so far away. That's hard. But if you're just like, today I'm going to eat healthy, and by the end of the week I'm going to try and go 1 or 2 pounds lighter, that is so much more achievable, and I respond in a better way. So when you were talking about goals and priorities, Tara, I think that's great. One of the ones I like is what's called SMART goals. And what I like about them, and this is what I was typing about, so you don't think I'm rude. I know you don't, but you know what I mean. I'm just saying it. So anyone there is thinking like, what's he doing? Inviting people on and typing? What kind of guy is he? But so SMART goals, let me bring them up, because I always forget. I always need to read out what they are, but it's interesting. So SMART goals are specific, so that's the S, measurable, so quantify how much they are. So the first one was specific, so target something. So let's say you want to build up Instagram. That's your target. Measurable. What we're saying, 10 followers, 20. Not, I want to be the biggest. You need to measure it, because otherwise it's going to be unachievable. Assignable. Specify who will do it. I will do it. Or if it's a team effort, you say, you'll be doing this, you'll be doing that. So you assign things. And this is the one I really like. The R is realistic. State what can be realistically achieved. I mean, what can you do during the day? Sana, you said you're working. This is your lunch break. We can have a great chat for 20 minutes. That's realistic. And that's probably good. That's enough. But you get what I mean. So we've said for 1 hour, we're going to talk. And time related. Oh, the last one was T, which is time related. So that's saying a goal. So in the SMART target, it would be, I want to start building up my Instagram so that at the end of the month I have 10 followers, right? So it's a SMART goal. I kind of got there in the end. What I like about this, though, it's not pie in the sky. I will learn the guitar. I will set up an architecture practice. Of course you can do that, but it should be at the start. I am going to bring on a client and do some work. I'm going to bring on a client this month. We're going to measure. I'm going to do a planning application. I will do it myself. And that's realistic, because I have the hours to do that outside, and time, I'm going to do it this month. I'm going to do it now. And so I like that kind of way of looking at it. Bite-sized, achievable, realistic. Well, so does that kind of what do you think, Tara? Am I in the right ballpark?
It's interesting that you're talking about SMART goals. So I like SMART goals, like what you're talking about. But sometimes I feel like we need to have the ability to reevaluate them, which
Yeah.
because I mean, particularly in the field that I work with, people tend to feel bad about themselves if they're not achieving the realistic goals or that sort of thing. So that's why I do talk a lot about making priorities. So if you make a priority on Monday and you didn't meet your priorities on Friday, having the ability to reevaluate that and say, well, I didn't meet my SMART goals or my goals. It's okay. Next week I'll just start again. So that's why I like the idea of SMART goals, but I think that we don't put enough emphasis on the ability to reevaluate and just be like, it's okay. It's not the worst thing in the world if you didn't meet something, because life happens. And I think the other thing too is that life does happen. You can make really big goals or intentions, and then stuff happens that you can't control. You can't control how many followers you get really on Instagram because of other things or external factors. So there's lots of things that we can't control. So what we can control though is what we do about it. So if we don't meet those goals, we can reevaluate and say, okay, I'm going to go back to it again. It's okay. And that's why I think it's important to sort of set that in place because I mean, I know that myself, even when learning French, for example, I just went through this cycle of feeling bad about myself because I'm like, okay, I didn't meet my goal this week. Oh, I'm so terrible. I'm never going to speak French. But it's just little by little, just little bit by bit. And I mean, the people that I work with too, they're busy. They can't always fit doing English things between the lessons. So, it's okay. It's okay if you don't meet your goals every week. You just reevaluate them and you come back to them. So, I think it's important. Everyone's different. We all do things differently, but be nice to yourself. And I like what Sana was saying too about exercise. I think for me, when I'm feeling unproductive or what am I doing, every time I do exercise, something comes into my head. So I look at something from a new perspective. I have a new way of looking at it. And I think, I need to write this down on my hand every time I get back from a run because I need to remind myself, go for a run because it's good for you. But
Amazing. I think well said. And so, Sana, we'll jump in 1 second on your thoughts on that. I love that though. I love that you were like, I've got something smarter than the SMART goal. But I love that. I love that. And but you touched upon something I really want to flesh out quickly before we jump into Sana, which was in the process of you learning French and quote unquote failing, you're still achieving something. You're doing much, much more. I run a recruitment business which has now evaporated, and so it turned over a lot of money years ago, but then it failed for X, Y, Z, and I had to start again. But you take all those lessons with you, and it's even with the Architecture Social. There's so much changes. Sana set a group out on inside the Architecture Social, and me and her had a chat about, does this work, is it not, what value are we doing, is it replicating what you're doing, and over time you've got to be able to adjust stuff, and I think that comes through learning, and I think that the journey there is almost as important as the skill or the goal or whatever itself. I mean, I said 10 years ago that I would learn the guitar, and I got it here, and I'm still quite bad at it, but when I do get on there, I enjoy it, I relax, it's for me. Okay, I'm not going to be on, Instagram with da-da-da. That's not what I do it for. I do it because I enjoy it. And that's quote-unquote a failure because I am not a good guitarist, but so what? So what? Anyway, Sana, I jumped in there, but feel free to add your thoughts, comments, or what's fresh in your mind while we're chatting now.
Yeah, I mean, so you talked about kind of setting SMART goals and stuff. I think another aspect of goal setting in that sense is systems. So I think if you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear, he kind of boasts on the fact about you need to be setting systems, not goals. And I think that's kind of like taking those goals and actually creating actionable tasks or steps that will help you get towards that goal. So for example, like we talked about the example with building an Instagram, how are you going to actually achieve that goal? Of course, you're going to set yourself, mini tasks and things to do, but actually having a system that's sort of repetitive, or you do on a weekly basis, for example, and kind of building and fleshing out those little habits is what's going to get you towards that goal as well. So I think that's a really key aspect of it too. That's what I was kind of thinking in my mind.
Yeah, and I love that. And do you know what? There's an element when we think about productivity and organized. There's an element which is work, and that is, as in what I found before is that when your heart's in something, these tasks tend to get done easier and they're more pleasurable, and then you enjoy getting organized, and then you are more productive because your passion's in it. And what I found that really is when something's not, my heart's not in it, it's just so much work, and it's just like and I'm just this guy. So I like. So as an internal joke at work that I am the guy, right, that on the internal systems I leave, sorry Will if you're watching here, oh maybe I'm out in myself, I am the worst at writing the notes, but I do just enough to get by, and it's not that it's just that's not where my passion is. But what's interesting when it comes to teaching or talking like this, I'm all over it. I enjoy it. I feel really productive, and I feel like I can offer a lot of value. And what's interesting is that when suddenly that's what it's about. So really, the architecture social is all about in its core something I'm proud of, which means like as an architect or a part two, would I find value in this? And that kind of keeps me going because then it's interesting. But then helping people is a part of it. So, and then what is interesting by doing that, all this stuff goes up. You know, it's quite nice when you're not trying anymore to build the YouTube up for the number, but you put out content and then it goes up. It's like, oh, great, this is cool. And I do think that really helps with keeping me motivated because suddenly then the word I want to say is it's less of a chore, you know? Whereas some of the stuff, and hey, I love my job at McDonald's, I'm not having to go at that. But when I'm saying like, right, I'm not that guy, you know? I'm the speaking guy. I'm not the typey guy, I'm the speaky guy. And I think that when you find something that you're passionate about as well, it can really ignite this element. And maybe the other thing is feedback loops. So when you do something, I think it really helps when you see that it's had a positive effect. It can really keep you going. So really, I remember once, and so Tara knows she was at the clubhouse last night, and I was saying to you there that sometimes it's after work and you're knackered. But when someone writes a message like, I really enjoyed that, I'm like, okay, I'll keep going next week. I'll do it even though I'm tired, but I'll do it because I do enjoy it and you saw some value out of it. And that can kind of keep me going. And I just wonder if then that's because it's something that we're all in together. You know, you're a creator, Sana, Tara, you create as well. And then you can kind of keep yourself going too. And I think that helps being in part of like, I know the word everyone says community, but yeah, being with people and doing goals together really helps. Maybe it's a bit like that studio culture we all have in university or in a practice, but when you're doing it together, it's much less daunting to go after your goals, and it's easier to stay productive because you've got the social accountability you were talking about earlier, Tara. You know?
Yeah, I think that's true. Like accountability helps, particularly for me. Accountability is amazing. Like knowing that somebody's there waiting for me, or that this is important to do because somebody's waiting for it. Of course, that helps. But then it's a balance, I guess, isn't it? About whether it's accountability or doing it for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I think that's a nice round-up statement, Sana. What I was going to say now, maybe you can drop 1 or 2 points in there, and then after what we can do, because we've got about 10 minutes left, what we can do is that we can show people a quick flavour of 1 or 2 things that we've done. And you're going to laugh, because I've set up a job-seeking template, which people find useful, and I forced myself to design it for other people, and I'm happy because people enjoy it. Yeah. And this is something I would have benefited from before. So hopefully I never need to use it, but it's there for other people to use. So what I'm going to do is bring this up quickly, and then in the background, Sana, maybe you can get the shared screen ready, and then we can go through it. Right, okay, let me bring this up. Helps to be organized to stay productive, doesn't it? So Let me just show everyone. Okay, so this is one I designed, right? So if you're job seeking, it's super, super stressful. And one of the things that I say is that you see so many people, and like myself before, that you think, how do you look for a job? Okay, you just go on Design, and maybe you write your application and you send it off and you forget about it. Now, in the context of a job search, that's going to get lost. So what I like to say to people is build your own database. And so when you're looking for a job, one of the tools, and so everyone, you can get this for free. I'll show you where. It's on the Architecture Social. Tara, you can have a look at it as well, and feel free
Looks
to
very, very
show your
productive.
students and stuff. Yeah, but so what I've done is like, here's a few companies that when you search in. And so what I've done is that when you see a job online, and this is one of the views, is that, so here we go, here's the old jobs. When you see a job, do it really quick, just really quick. You say, you copy the text, the part one architectural system role from Design. You can maybe put the job description. If you're interested in sectors and stuff down the line in your career, it's probably worth doing that and getting organized. And this is the most important one. When you send your application, you put your status, so when you sent it, and then you put as well the date of when you sent your CV. Because what that will do, sorry, I know it's a bit, oh, let's see if I can zoom in. No. Okay, but what I'm saying is, it's really important to be accountable when you send your CV to what company so you can follow up. And so what I like about this is that by adding things in, you are mentally seeing that at the end of the day, you applied for 10 places, you've got them in there, you know the date when to follow up. Whereas if you did what I used to do in the old days, if you just send them off, maybe you feel like you had a good day, but maybe then you doubt yourself. Whereas this, you get this feedback loop and you can see the progression. And so one of this then, which I like about this Airtable is that, say now when you are invited for an interview, you go, yay, and you move it over, you get organized and stuff. So this is a job search template which I made, and it would really help if I know the link. Yay, it's here. So you can go on the Architecture Socials website and you can go to create, if you type in job application tracker, let me put this hyperlink in, that'll help, won't it? That'll help. So there we go. You can go and check it out. I can't send that on LinkedIn, unfortunately, but if you go to this if you type job application tracker, you will find it. And that's something that I set up because I felt it would be helpful for someone looking for a job. It's the kind of thing I wish I had back in the day. And
It's very organized for someone who doesn't like lists. It's very good.
Yeah. Tara, I had to force myself. But at the end, I felt a lot better for it, and it's out there for anyone to download, use, repurpose for free. So that's, my one. Tara, you showed yours earlier, the fantastic post-it notes, so we don't need to see that online yet.
Post-it notes are the best.
Yeah, well, why not? If the point is, it's whatever works for you and trying something different. So maybe I should try a post-it note. So I love that. So Sana, what I'm going to do is bring up now your screen. Oh,
Okay.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this is my Notion setup. This is just one of the pages in my workspace, as you call it. And I think it builds on the idea that you just showed with Airtable. So for example, I've got my blog post, but I'll go in here, my social media content plan. So this is just a database, and I can actually add in views. Where is it? This one.
There you go. I just put your website on, so there you go.
Yeah, and then just drag and drop which ones are done, which ones aren't done. And then therefore, it just keeps it much more organized. But then the great thing about Notion is that in each database, everything is actually a page in itself. So
Right.
you know how in Excel you can have all these, you can replicate this, but the actual entry that you have here, it's a page in itself. For example, if I open up this one, this is a blog post that I've written. And I've actually moved over my whole kind of content creating side to Notion as well. So I can essentially add in all my text in here. This is a template that I built. And I think templates are also a great sort of asset for productivity because it just saves so much time. So I've just blobbed in the template, written in all my stuff. Here's my text. And then at the end, I can have these 4 or 5 key kind of next little tasks that I need to do, tick them off, and then I'm done. And that's literally it. And then I can kind of go over here and schedule them and, whatever, see whatever status it's at right now. And then week after week, I can just literally just publish them as I go. And then I have a whole database about all these different blog post ideas as well. So that's just literally one database that I've duplicated. So this is filtered for the upcoming posts, and then this is filtered for all my ideas and then all the kind of categories related to them. So yeah, it's really simple, it's really easy, and yeah, it doesn't really take long to set up either. I mean, if you start from one database, you can kind of build it up from there, and you kind of also get stuck in this like rabbit hole of going page within page within page, which is it's really fun actually once you do get into it. So for example, we've got a little team hub going on at the moment, and we've been updating the website, for example. So I've got someone to analyze what the website was like before, and they've kind of added in their notes. So it actually works with tools as well as, which is a great thing. And then I've kind of archived all the blog posts that are currently on the website. So Notion also has a clipper, a web clipper. So it's like a Chrome extension, and if you go on like any kind of web page or YouTube video or anything, all you have to do is save that page, and it automatically saves it into a database. I've got one, where is it? So currently I'm kind of looking at all the kind of YouTube videos that I'm learning from and kind of writing notes about them. So this is one that I've added in, and it's automatically put in the link and the video itself. And these are like my little notes that I've sort of added on. So it's also kind of building on this whole kind of second brain concept in a sense, where you're putting things on the back burner and you can have them in your brain at all times, but it's in your digital brain, so you don't have to kind of remember all this information or keep it in different kind of areas. It's all kind of in one place in that sense. So that's kind of like a quick overview of how I use Notion at the moment.
Love it. Wow, Tara, we've got a work cut out for us.
Well, I actually bought Sana's template. So I bought Sana's template last year, and then I started using it, and it's been the best thing that I've done, because not only am I using it for, say, content creation, I'm also using it with my students. So each of my students has a page, and I'm just still getting used to how to use it. But what I do is then share that page with them as a link, and then they can go through all the different tools and the activities, and they see, okay, it's lesson 5. What are we doing in lesson 5? Then I can embed videos, all sorts of things. So in that way, Notion works really well. And then when I'm doing group sessions as well, I just share the link with them, and I put notes in there. And then I don't have to send emails to them and update them. It's all just in one place. So it works really well. And there's a lot of templates for all different things. So teaching, productivity, goal setting, lots of things. So yeah, once I finally got over my this is too hard and started using it, I was like, why did it take me so long? This is so amazing.
Well, this is it. I think it's definitely worth checking out. I think on that note, Tara, me and you need to have another little look at Notion and jump in. I am conscious now, Sana's got to go back to work in 1 minute. So what we can do now is probably continue the conversation as well. So it's probably worth mentioning for everyone here. Oh, we can see Sean said, thanks for some great tips. Thank you, Sean. It's our pleasure. I mean, fair enough. I really appreciate Sana joining us on her lunch break as well, and Tara during the busy day, which is great. And so we all have our own websites as well. It's probably worth saying. What I love is that, I mean, so you can find Sana on her website, Scale's website, and as well as that, what I was going to mention is as well, you can actually find Tara, and you're going to enjoy this, Sana. She's got her own group now, and she's got a little following on the Architecture Social, and it's really cool. It's really, really cool. And let's talk about two things, because Sana's got a really cool Discord group, which I think is super cool, with 200 people. And so Tara's got a little mentoring group on the Architecture Social. But if you want to follow up on everyone else, so you can join the Architecture Social community, do it. Be the number 4,000. I will give
I think we need to give them something special, like a book or...
I would give them
a Notion template. A Notion template would be a great
idea. We'll do something like that. I think we've got to have a bit of fun with number 4,000, which will be soon. You can drop Sana a message on the Architecture Social, or on Instagram. You can find Tara on the internet as well, in the Architecture Social, and you can find me on the Architecture Social as well. So thank you everyone for joining us. Have a fantastic afternoon. Set yourself like a little task, a little priority,
2
not
minutes.
a smart goal, because we're gonna, not a smart goal. Maybe if you want, everyone's different. That's what we're saying.
That's true.
And so enjoy your afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Tara, just stay on the line 1 second, and we will close the broadcast now. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.